My name is Tom. I'm with PDS Equipment, and today we're going to replace a subtank on a Mimaki 6042 Mark II. It's the same process for the UJF-3042 Mark IIs, the 6042 Mark II, and Mark IIes. All the same subtank, all the same process. All right, let's talk about the subtank. I feel it's important you understand the component you're replacing. So this is what it's going to look like in the machine, more than likely. You've got a cap on the front usually, if it's a CMYK or primer clear. If this channel that you're replacing the subtank on is a white channel, you will have another ink line here, and that's going to be the recirculation line. Regardless of what type of ink channel, the center one is going to be your ink delivery line. That's what delivers ink into the subtank. And this right here is your vacuum port. Probably a clear line on it. You don't want to get these mixed up. So you can see here each one has a different port that runs into the machine. Back here on the vacuum line, it's worth mentioning we have a block filter. So if ink were ever to overfill this subtank to the point where it got to this filter stops it from entering the vacuum system. That's important that we don't let that happen. Now, if ink gets into this, it locks it up. You have to replace the subtank at that time. That may be why you're here watching this video. But we want to make sure, we want to figure out what's gone wrong with the subtank before we just replace it usually. And if you've had ink inside here from the old one, we need to determine there's a possibility another part upstream has failed. But nonetheless, let's get back to the task at hand, which is replacing the subtank. So what you can do is disconnect these eventually, and this has to get disconnected. Of course, we'll talk about the proper sequence, but I wanted to show you with this out of the machine how these connections and everything work. It's much easier to video. So on the front, we can just pinch these tabs, and you will see there's a seal that is inside there. Each of these ink lines and vacuum connections should have a seal in it. If it's gray, we need to replace it to blue. If it's blue, I like to replace it with a new one every time I'm in here. But nonetheless, so that's what we'll have on the top here, front. In the center will be our ink line. So same thing, pinch to take that off. A lot of times you can use the cap from the front to cap off your ink line. That way, as you're working with the rest of the subtank and stuff, ink will not be dripping out, or it won't be pulling the ink back away from the connection. So that's what we can do. Now you'll notice there's tabs inside each of these little arms or slots and when you pinch it together, they disconnect. Anytime you're connecting, you want to make sure that that seal is centered. I like the gray on the black because you can see that tab inside there versus not inside there. When you're working, you're going to have black tabs and it's going to be really difficult to see. Nonetheless, that's how these connections work. The connections when you're dealing with the subtank, it's just the two tabs, two arms, but it's the same thing. You really want to make sure that you're centering up when you go to connect, and that you get a click from both arms so you know. Nonetheless, disconnect the ink line and then disconnect the air line as well. Keep track of your blue seals. Like I said, you may be replacing those. So the connection on the back here is the sensor. This one can be a little tricky. I like to push down with my middle finger and then use my index and thumb to pull the sensor away. We need to swing the bottom of the sensor away to pull it down, as you'll see. So I'm going to push, pinch, and that's how it works. So you see the fingers up here that those tabs slide into. And on here, there's the fingers. Down here is a location pin and a hole in the sensor. So what we do to attach it to the new one is slide the tabs into the fingers and then push the location pin into the hole. When you hear that click and you can't pull the bottom away, that's when you know it's connected correctly on the new Subtank. But again, to take off, just push that down, pull away from the bottom, and that's how that comes off. That is the Subtank sensor. It reads the float with a little magnet on it. That way the printer knows how much ink is in the Subtank. So that's the connections and the basic functions of the Subtank. If your head is 100% completely clogged, you will not be able to do a proper discharge, which is how you get rid of the ink. You end up printing the ink out of the Subtank to discharge it for a replacement. If you can't do that because the head is clogged, then you will want to use the recirculation port to pull the ink out of the Subtank first. If you just remove this full of ink, it's going to dump all that ink onto the head, and that's going to be a mess and can be dangerous. So, if that's the case, what I recommend is a syringe, length of tubing, with our common connector on it. What I would do with this is in the machine, before you take it off, you connect it here and just pull that ink out of the Subtank. So you would be connecting to this one, which is normally the recirculation. You see that is the lowest passage into this Subtank that'll get the most ink out of it that you can. Again, normally you would be printing it out and you would get all of it out. But if you can't do that, you can use the recirculation to get most of it out. For this procedure, we need to power up in maintenance or technician mode. Press and hold function 1 and function 3, and then momentarily press power. Continue to hold these buttons until you either see the please wait message or hear a beep. There was the beep. So we'll just let this power up and on its own. As we know, it takes a couple minutes. And while it's powering up, we can go ahead and remove this cover, 7 screws. And if you're replacing a white Subtank, I would recommend go ahead and remove this side cover as well. Once the machine is powered up, we need to discharge the Subtank or Subtanks that we are replacing. So to do that, again, we need to be in technician mode for this. We're going to go to menu. If you're in technician mode, you'll have these 3 submenus, but we're going to go into pound adjust. Scroll down till you see Subtank. And we are going to discharge ink. For this example I'm going to be using channel 8, which is a white channel to swap out a Subtank. The reason I'm using that channel is it's the easiest one to see in the machine. It's also one of the easiest ones to replace, but nonetheless I think it'll be the best choice for us today. So in that case, I'm going to go to discharge ink. I have a dash for every channel. Now I cannot discharge just a single channel. They are paired up according to what head they are. So on this 4-head machine, primer clear shares the same head. So I cannot discharge primer without discharging clear, or vice versa. Second head, I cannot discharge cyan without yellow, so on and so forth. The 2 whites are on its own head. I cannot discharge channel 8 without also discharging channel 7. You can just change one Subtank, but you end up discharging 2 of them to do so. Not a big deal, but I just thought I would mention that. So we're going to scroll over. And here I'm going to hit, I believe it's up. There it is. So now when you see the WW, If you're doing one of the white subtanks, that's what you want to see. When you hit enter, it will begin discharging that pair of subtanks. All right, and once your subtank discharge is complete, I like to wait about 5 minutes and do it again. A second subtank discharge. Sometimes you will get less ink dribbling out of the subtank, I believe, if you do the second one. So once that's done, you can go ahead and power down the machine at the front. Once it's powered down, I like to turn it off at the side. Back here on the side of the machine, turn the main power switch off so it can't power up while we're working. Fully powered down, we need to remove this door. There's a few ways you can do that. One is to remove these front screws. I do not recommend you do that. A lot of people remove the top screws. Easier to reassemble, still pretty difficult. I found the best option is to loosen that screw, remove the bottom one. These are the inside mounts of the hinge point. Loosen the top screw, remove the bottom, and the door will come away. And with those screws removed on the inside, only attachment is the safety switch. So you can, be careful, just kind of set it right there for the procedure. At this point, I want you to bring the carriage back. Now we're going to remove this hood. 2 screws. And here we can see our subtanks. We're going to remove this hoop as well. Just loosen the screws. And gently, carefully remove it. Now we have access to our subtank assemblies. Here is subtank number 8. The ink supply line is labeled channel 8. Its recirculation line has a collar labeled number 10. It's good to note all this. You might want to write this down or take pictures. Here is its vacuum supply line to the subtank. It is shared with 8. You can see they or 7. You can see they tee together back here. So this is from the front. Back here on the side, we get a better view of the subtanks through the window. You can see they're empty. That's what they should look like. You can see a little bit of ink at the bottom, but luckily, because channel 8 and 7 we can see, we can definitely show you that the subtanks are empty, which is what state they should be in before you disconnect them. So before we start, we want to make sure we have everything we need on hand. The new subtank. I've got some caps for the ink lines all ready to go here. The alpha wipes. Now these are what you must use when working inside the internals of the ink systems. This is a lint-free Mimaki's recommendation. I strongly recommend you use only these when working inside the ink systems. Have plenty of those on hand. You may need a screwdriver if you have one of the older Mark IIs with the metal subtank holder. We'll get to that in a minute. And in case you have to discharge manually, here's my syringe apparatus we talked about earlier. All right, So here we are. We're going to go ahead and start. We're going to disconnect. I want to have some absorbent cloths ready, just in case. We're going to disconnect. I'm going to go ahead and put a cap on that. This is my recirculation line. Make sure the cap is fully seated, and it is. Now we'll do the same thing with the ink supply line. That one, the seal stayed with the connector, so I'm using a connector without a seal in it. Okay, so both my ink lines are safe. I can let those dangle out of the way. And here we're going to disconnect the air line. I'm going to go ahead and pull the blue seal out. It may stay in the subtank, it may stay in the connector. It doesn't matter. And set that aside. Okay, our ink connections are disconnected. Now we will remove our subtank holder. It's this piece right here, right below the two subtanks. A little plastic. Gently lift that up a little bit. With your other hand, slide forward. Now, on the older machines, this is a metal assembly and there'll be a black screw. You need to remove that black screw, and then pretty much the same thing. Remove this. As you can see, it's got fingers and there's barbs on the subtank. See them there? And that's what it does. It holds the subtanks on top of the head. So it's real important when you reinsert this that you get it in properly. Okay, we're about ready to pull this subtank off. I want to be ready with some cloth. I'm going to go ahead, because I can, it's easy to get to. I want to mitigate as much dripping as possible when I pull this subtank off. If you wish, you could wear gloves for this procedure. So now the only thing that's holding this on is the friction of the seal, the lower seal. For instance, here on the new one, you can see there's a seal inside there that is just pushed down onto the head. That's the only thing holding this on. So when I pop this up, some ink is going to dribble out. I want to capture as much of that as I can. There we go. I have it. You can see a little bit came out. I want to dab that up. It's safe to do this with this cloth. There we go. Very little ink dribbled out. That's great. So now I need to remove this sensor, as we discussed earlier. Here you can see it's kind of held on. A little bit of a harness clip. You just kind of zigzag it out, and now the subtank is free. Now, if you are doing both subtanks, I strongly recommend you label this sensor before you move on to the other channel. You can get these mixed up real easy, and there's no indication. So in that case, what I do is I make myself a couple labels. You can either put them up here in the wiring harness, so when you disconnect, you just label what subtank this came off of. I would make one for channel 7 as well. That way, you know once these are dangling back here and you go to put the subtanks on, which one went to which. All right, new subtank ready to put on. First thing we want to do is insert the sensor onto the back of the subtank. Let's remove this label. Make sure it's fully seated. All right. This water line does route like that. So we're going to push this seal down onto here. And you should feel it slip on. A lot of people just get it and a little bit of resistance. They stop. They're afraid to break something. You should feel a pop or a little bit of a, I'm going to sop up a little bit of this Down here. You should feel it pop on, or at least feel it slip down. There it is. So I know that's fully seated. That's great. Now we can reattach our lines. Okay, I got my seal in there, sitting properly. Let's reattach my vacuum line. There we go. In this case, the ink supply line, channel 8, goes into the center port of the subtank. I'm going to remove this seal, install a new one. Again, proper alignment. Okay, got a good click on both sides. And now my cap, or my recirculation line. That is a new seal on that one. 2 clicks. Okay, so all my lines are back on. If you look down the front, you can see that all of those tabs are in alignment. You really want to look at these and make sure that all of these are in. For instance, if this weren't connected all the way, it would be pretty obvious because that arm doesn't match the other ones. So just looking down the front is a good way to see if everything's properly seated. Okay, subtank holder goes on. As we discussed that bar below, what you want to do is take this tip right here. It goes inside this track. See the little groove? And then make sure the subtanks are down as you slip it through. Get that water line out of the way. There we go. So the front is on, but we need to check to make sure that back clip is in. Here, I'll go ahead and redo it. You can watch the video, watch that go inside the tab. So with the subtanks held down, pushed in like so. If you don't get it, like here, I'm behind. I'm not actually in the slot, but the tab is behind the slot. So here, my subtanks, look at that. It's up above. My subtanks could come off. This whole assembly could come right up, see? So you really want to make sure that you're inside that tab. It's hard to see from the front, but I wanted to show you the engagement from a good point of view. With the subtank holder fully installed and fully seated all the way back, should look just like the others. And same with the subtanks. Subtanks should be as close to the holder as the others. If it seems like it's a lot higher, then we might have missed the barbs or something, or the parts that stick out that the fingers capture, the subtank holders capture. But that all looks good. Okay, new subtank installed, ink line reattached, recirculation line reattached, vacuum line attached. We have the subtank holder correctly installed, clipped down front and back. We have the sensor done a while ago, On the back, made sure that it was clipped down at the bottom as well as held by the fingers at the top. That's the ink sensor that reads the float inside the subtank. Go ahead and take a look around. Look at the subtank next to where you were working. Make sure you didn't bump anything, knock anything loose. And here in a second, we're going to power up. So we've powered up in technician mode like we discussed earlier. And we're going to go menu, adjust, subtank, fill up ink, and it's telling us it already recognizes the ones we need to, but you can make adjustments here. And now it's going to fill up the white subtanks. Here we can see on the side the subtanks actually filling up. They would fill up roughly 2/3 of that reservoir you see there. And that's what they look like full. So now we can go ahead and put the cover, the light covers back on the subtanks. Once the fill up is done, you can just end out of here. Some of the firmwares may ask you about the head ID. You can just hit enter. We didn't change the head, so there's nothing to do there. So you can just end out of here to your home screen. And if all went well, we'll have no error messages here. You should be ready to go. Go ahead and get all your covers back on. I would power down for that. With all the covers reattached, we're ready to power up and begin printing. That's it for the subtank swap on a UJF-6042 or 3042 Mark II or Mark IIe.